The year was 1587. Tall wooden ships with white sails crossed the vast, deep blue ocean. They had sailed all the way from England, a long and difficult journey. On board these ships were more than 100 men, women, children. They were English settlers, full of hope for the future. They dreamed of a new life in a new land. This new land was America, a place they had only heard about in stories. Great forests, wide rivers, endless opportunity. They were leaving behind their old lives for the promise of something better and greater than they had ever known. They were brave pioneers, stepping into the unknown. Their destination was a place called Roanoke Island. It was located off the coast of what is now North Carolina. The island was green and lush, a stark contrast to the crowded cities they had left behind in England. The air felt fresh and clean. Birds, the gentle lapping of waves, not of carts on cobblestone streets. For these settlers, this was supposed to be their paradise. This was not just an adventure. It was a chance to build a legacy for their families, for their country, a new beginning from scratch. The group was led by a man named John White, artist, mapmaker, but now he was a governor. He had a personal stake in the colony's success. His own daughter, Eleanor Dare, was among the settlers. She was pregnant and would soon give birth to the first English child born in the New World. This child, Virginia Dare, became a symbol of their hopes. She represented the future they were all working so hard to create. Her birth was a celebration, a sign that they could truly make this wild land their home. The settlers unloaded their supplies from the ships, barrels of food, tools for building, seeds for planting, dense woods, sandy shores with a mix of excitement and fear. They knew the work ahead would be hard. Build homes, clear land for farms, learn to survive in an unfamiliar environment. But their spirits were high. The settlers immediately began the hard work of building their colony. Men swung axes. They felled tall pine trees. Those pines became logs for houses. The sounds of construction filled the air, hammering and sawing. Simple, sturdy homes went up. Thatched roofs were added. Houses clustered into a small village. A tall wooden palisade was erected. It was meant to protect them, from wild animals and from native people they did not yet know well. The village became a small piece of England in the wilderness. Life was hard, but the community worked together. Women tended small gardens. They planted seeds brought from England. They hoped to grow familiar vegetables. They also learned new crops from local Native Americans: corn, squash. Challenges began to mount. Initial supplies ran low faster than expected. The growing season was different here. Some crops failed in the sandy soil. Relations with some native tribes became strained. Misunderstandings grew into mistrust. The wilderness that once promised opportunity now felt isolating and menacing. Urgency grew as weeks turned to months. Approaching winter was a major concern. The colonists gathered to discuss their dwindling supplies. The conversation was serious, and the faces of the settlers were etched with worry. They knew that without help from England, their small community might not survive the harsh American winter. After much debate, they reached a consensus. Someone had to return to England to gather more provisions and recruit more settlers. The journey would be long and dangerous, but it was their only hope. They chose their governor, John White, for this critical mission. He was reluctant to leave his family, especially his newborn granddaughter, Virginia Dare, but he knew it was necessary. John White promised he would return as quickly as possible. He said his goodbyes to his daughter, his son-in-law, and the tiny baby who was the hope of their colony. It was an emotional farewell, filled with both fear and hope. The settlers watched as the ship carrying their governor sailed away, disappearing over the horizon. They placed all their trust in him. They believed he would succeed and come back with the aid they desperately needed. White's journey back to England was fraught with problems. When he arrived, he found his home country preparing for war with Spain. The Spanish Armada, a huge fleet of warships, was planning to invade. All of England's resources were being marshaled for the war effort. No ships were available for a supply run to America. White's pleas for help were met with sympathetic but firm refusals. John White was trapped in England, frustrated and powerless. Every day that passed was another day his colonists were left waiting. Finally, after 3 long years, the war with Spain ended. John White was at last able to secure passage back to America. The journey was filled with anticipation and dread. He worried constantly. Had the colonists survived? Were his daughter and granddaughter safe? He imagined a joyful reunion, with villagers running to the shore to greet his ship. As the ship approached the coast in August of 1590, he looked for familiar signs of the settlement, but as they neared Roanoke Island, an unsettling quiet hung in the air. There was no smoke rising from the village. There were no figures on the beach. The island was eerily silent. White and his sailors rowed to shore, their hearts heavy with foreboding. They called out names, but only the wind and seagulls answered them. When they reached the settlement site, they were met with a shocking scene. The entire colony was gone. All the houses had been carefully dismantled. There were no signs of struggle, no bodies, no skeletons. It was as if more than 100 men, women, and children had simply vanished into thin air. The village had been completely and methodically removed. As White and his men searched the deserted area, they found something. Carved into a wooden post was a single word: Croatoan. He had instructed the colonists to carve their destination into a tree or post if they had to move. He had also told them to carve a cross if they were in danger. There was no cross. This suggested they had left willingly. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, and also the name of a friendly Native American tribe. It was their only lead. The discovery gave John White a glimmer of hope. It seemed to be a clear message indicating where the colonists had gone. He planned to sail to Croatoan Island to search for them. He believed he would find his family and the other settlers living among the friendly Croatoan people. However, fate intervened once again. A powerful storm began to brew. The sailors were unwilling to risk their lives in dangerous waters. They refused to go to Croatoan Island and insisted on returning to England. Heartbroken and defeated, John White was forced to sail back to England without ever knowing what happened to his family. He was never able to finance another trip to America. The mystery of the Lost Colony of Roanoke was born. What happened to the more than 100 people who had vanished? The clue Croatoan was the starting point for centuries of speculation. Over the centuries, several theories have emerged. The most prominent is that the colonists went to Croatoan Island and assimilated with the local tribe. Later explorers reported encountering Native Americans with gray eyes or knowledge of English, suggesting survival and integration. Other theories suggest more tragic ends: attack by hostile tribes, lost at sea attempting to return to England, or scattered into smaller groups. The truth remains buried by time, leaving us with only whispers and possibilities. What do you think happened to the lost colony of Roanoke?